I lost count of how many times I tried to change something about myself, to change something that I didn't like. And for the majority of my life, I was the most inconsistent person ever. And I really hated this about myself. I really believe that if I was more consistent, I would have had much more success much earlier. And I've made so many attempts to try and change this part of my character. I forced myself to do things and they worked for a while, but then somehow I always get back to square one. And I never understood why I would keep sabotaging myself. Why would I do this to myself? Why would I keep doing something that I know it's not good for me? Like, how many times have you tried to change something about your life? Maybe you wanted to get in shape, or maybe you wanted to start a business. So you made the decision to commit and to start, and you tell yourself, this time is going to be different. This time I will go through with it. I will actually stick to it. And then you do it for a week or maybe even a month. Then, without almost realizing it, you start reverting to your old self. And before you know it, you go to doing exactly what you were doing before and what you were trying to change in the first place. And that's extremely frustrating, isn't it? Like, I know the feeling, I understand the feeling, and I know it's frustrating. And the worst part is that you can't explain why. Like, you say, like, I'm doing all the right things. How is that possible? And of course, you start thinking that you're the problem. You stop believing in yourself, and you start doubting everything you do. And you start telling to yourself, and this is not who I am. Maybe I'm not built for this. Maybe I'm not made for this. But I want you to understand that the problem is not you. It's not that you have a particular disadvantage that stops you from becoming the best version of yourself. It's not because you're not good enough. It's not because you're not smart enough, and it's none of those things. The real reason you keep ending up back to square one has nothing to do with discipline or motivation or how bad you want it. What's stopping you is your identity. And I'm not talking about philosophy here. I'm not, I like to be very practical. And I'm saying that your brain has built a model of who you are, and it will sabotage anything that threatens that model. Not because it wants you to fail, but because it wants to protect you. It's actually a survival mechanism. So in this video, I want to tell you exactly how you can stop sabotaging yourself so that you can finally become the version of yourself you dream of and that you want to be. And the first step is understanding what identity actually is. And as I said before, I don't mean identity in a philosophical sense. I mean in a very practical sense. Your identity is basically your brain's model of who you are, and it's built over years of repeated behavior, repeated thoughts, repeated experiences. And I like to think of it as a container. Inside the container are your thoughts, experiences, and actions, and all of those things define your personality. They define who you are. And if you think about it, there are many things that you unconsciously do in your life. And I'm talking about small actions, like things like, I don't know, brushing your teeth, driving to work, looking at your phone all the time. And these are all things that you do automatically because you repeat the same action every day. Now, the same, let's say, automation that handles the small stuff also handles the big stuff, the important stuff, like your income level, like your relationship patterns, like how consistent you are and how much you push yourself, etc., etc. And the model doesn't distinguish between behaviors that are serving you and behaviors that are not serving you. It just maintains consistency with whatever version of you as repeated the most. So if you spent years being someone who starts things that doesn't finish them, that's your identity container. If you spent years living at a certain level, that's the model. and the model will defend itself against anything that tries to change it. Now, most people, when they want to change something about themselves, they go straight to behavior. They try to force new actions, like wake up earlier, or go to the gym, or stop scrolling, or work harder. And it works for a while because willpower can override your identity temporarily. But the key word is temporarily, because it cannot do it forever, because the model is still there underneath, and it hasn't changed. And eventually, willpower will run out, and the model will snap you back and will become your old version, the old version of yourself. And that's why change feels like swimming upstreams. Because imagine you're swimming upstream and you're using all the energy you have and you're trying your best to keep swimming. And you can do that, but only for a little bit. And then you have to stop swimming. When you stop swimming because you have no energy anymore, you basically go back to where you started. And swimming upstream and using all your energy is the same thing as relying on willpower. The main reason why most people fail at changing themselves is not that they lack motivation or discipline, it's that they're trying to change their behavior without changing the model that produces it. And I want you to think about it like this. If you have three layers of who you are, and the surface layer is your actions, is what you do every day. The middle layer is your stories, so the things that you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. And then the deepest layer is your identity and the core model your brain has built of you. And most people try to change from the outside in, so they attack the actions directly, but actions that contradict your identity feel foreign and forced and exhausting. And because your brain is constantly trying to pull them back into alignment with the model, trying to keep the consistency. So the better and faster path is actually inside out. So change the identity first, and then actions will follow automatically because now they're in alignment with who you believe you are. So stop fighting yourself, and the behavior becomes natural instead of forced. Now that you understand what identity is, let me explain exactly why you keep sabotaging yourself. And this is the concept that changed everything for me personally, and I think it explains what happens inside your brain. It's called the identity thermostat. So think about how a thermostat works in a room. You set it to 20 degrees, and if the room gets too cold, the thermostat kicks in and brings the temp back to 20. The room gets too warm, the thermostat kicks in and cools it back down to 20. No matter what happens, the thermostat always brings the room back to its set point. And your identity works exactly the same way. You have a set point of every area of your life, a baseline, a level of income that feels normal to you, a level of consistency, productivity, success, whatever it is that your brain has decided is your baseline. And your nervous system is constantly working just like the thermostat, mostly without you even realizing it, to keep you at that set point. That's why you can have an incredible month. For example, you hit a new record, you feel unstoppable, and then somehow, almost magically, you make a series of decisions that bring you back to right to where you were before. And that's the thermostat. That's your baseline identity working to bring you back to normal conditions. When you do something that feels unfamiliar and different, your brain manufactures reasons to pull back. So you start getting complacent and you start making worse decisions, and you don't do it consciously, but it happens. And the same thing works in reverse. If you fall way below your normal level, you'll find yourself working harder almost automatically because your thermostat is trying to bring you back to baseline. So this is actually why some people can lose everything and rebuild it relatively quickly, and why other people win the lottery and then go broke again after a few years. Their thermostat is set at a certain level, and it keeps bringing them back to baseline. So here's the part that most people don't want to hear, is that the ceiling you feel in your life right now is not imposed by the world. It's not your circumstances, it's not the economy, it's not bad timing or bad luck. It's your thermostat or baseline identity. And this is also what self sabotage is. It's not some mysterious self destructive impulse. It's just this thermostat doing its job. When you start exceeding your set point, your nervous system generates discomfort, doubt, and distraction. So you feel the urge to pull back, slow down, and to make the safe choice. And you interpret that as fear of failure. But it's not fear of failure, it's the fear of becoming someone your identity doesn't recognize yet. So the question is, how do you actually raise the baseline? How do you change the set point so that the new level becomes your new normal instead of something your brain keeps rejecting? Most people's solutions to self-sabotage is to try harder, force the behavior through sheer discipline and willpower. And as I said before, it works only for a while, but it never lasts. And the reason is simple. Willpower is you consciously fighting against your identity every single day. And that fight is exhausting. You can win it for a week, maybe a month, but you can't win it forever because your identity always has more stamina than your willpower. And identity will always beat the shit out of willpower in the long run. And that's the difference between someone who goes to the gym consistently for years and someone who goes for 3 weeks in January. One is running on motivation and willpower, and the other has made it part of their identity. They don't decide whether to go; they just go because that's who they are. So, trying to change your behavior through willpower without changing the identity underneath is like adding water to a bucket full of holes. You can keep adding all the water you want; it will just keep leaking, and as soon as you stop adding the water, the bucket empties and it goes back to the level zero. So, how do you actually change your identity? How do you raise the baseline? Let's forget about journaling, affirmations, visualization, and all that stuff for a second. Those things have their place, but that's not what I'm talking about in this video. You cannot just think your way into a new identity. You can read every book, watch every video, and still be the same person. Because understanding something intellectually is completely different from embodying it and actually living it. So identity changes through evidence and not through thinking. I'm gonna say it again. Identity changes through evidence and not through thinking. So this is how it works. Your brain is constantly building and updating its model of who you are based on what you actually do. Every action you take is a data point, and your brain uses those data points to decide what kind of person you are. So, if you want to change the model, you have to change the data that you're feeding your brain. Every time you act like the future version of you, even in a small way, you give your brain a new data point. And one data point doesn't change the model, but as the evidence accumulates, something starts to shift. The old belief starts losing credibility, and your brain gradually starts accepting the new identity as real. Think of it as a court case. Your old identity has years of evidence supporting it. Thousands of days of repeated behavior proved who you were. To change the verdict, you need to build a new case, and you do that one piece of evidence at a time. This is why small actions matter more than grand gestures. People think they need to make some massive, dramatic change to shift their identity, but your brain responds to frequency and not magnitude. And every time you tell yourself you're going to do something and you actually do it, you're accumulating evidence of your new identity. That's why it's important to start small. Because if you try to turn your life around all at once, you won't stick to it and you will get back to square one like very, very quickly. So, those small and easy changes produce consistent actions. Consistent actions produce evidence that you are the person you want to be. And the more evidence you provide, the more your brain consolidates your new identity. Now, when you first start acting like the new identity, it feels fake. It feels unnatural. It's like you're pretending to be someone you're not. That's why fake it till you make it's a thing. The feeling is uncomfortable, but that's a good thing because the discomfort is the sign that you're changing. And if you think about it, if acting like the new version of you felt completely comfortable and natural from day one, you wouldn't be changing anything. You'd just be doing what you always do. So you keep going, you act like the person you want to become before you feel like that person. And eventually the feeling catches up with the behavior. And that's how identity changes, not through thinking, but through repeated actions until the evidence becomes undeniable. Now, let me give you three practical things that you can start doing right now to actually shift your identity. So, number one is find the stories that are keeping your baseline where it is. Every identity is built on a foundation of stories, things you've been telling yourself for years. Like, for example, I'm not the kind of person who's good with money. I always start things and never finish them. These stories feel like facts because you've been telling yourself the same things over and over, but they're not. They're just beliefs that got repeated so many times that they became automatic. So ask yourself, what are the two or three core beliefs I have about myself that are keeping me at my current level? And also ask yourself, where do these beliefs come from? Because they usually come from outside. Like these beliefs might come from what your friends and family have told you. Now, number two is start acting like the next version of you. Not the final version, but just the next one. Don't try to go from 0 to 100 overnight because your baseline identity will reject that change immediately. Don't try to become a completely different person tomorrow. Just act like a slightly elevated version of who you are today. Raise the bar a little bit and take actions consistently and let the evidence accumulate and then raise the bar again. Now, number three is change your environment. As I said before, a lot of our core beliefs come from our environment, the environment we live in, and they come from our friends and family. And it's very hard to change your identity if you stay in the same environment that produced the old identity in the first place. I know that right now you can't change everything about your environment. Maybe you can't just move to another country and start a new life, but you can slowly start to move away from your old environment. And if you can do it, you should do it. If you're living with your parents, you should try to move out. If you're hanging out with people who spend their entire time smoking, doing drugs, drinking, not being productive or whatever, you should leave that group. Try to surround yourself with people you admire, people who make you want to become the best version of yourself. And at the end of the day, you are the sum of the people you spend most of your time with. So try to curate the environment you live in as much as you can. So this is how you change your identity and stop sabotaging yourself. And you can become anyone you want to be, but it doesn't happen overnight. You have to take small actions and let the evidence accumulate. So I hope this video was helpful, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.